It was a test, cruel, calculated, and cold. In the silence of a marble-floored mansion, beneath a glittering chandelier whose crystal teardrops caught the morning light like frozen moments of beauty, and the soft ticking of an antique grandfather clock that had counted the minutes of 3 generations, a safe stood wide open in the master's study. Inside, bundles of cash lay stacked like green bricks of temptation, glinting beside ropes of gold and diamonds that sparkled with promises of freedom from every worry, every sleepless night, every prayer whispered in desperation. He knew she would pass through here. He knew her schedule down to the minute, had memorized the soft pattern of her footsteps on the marble, the quiet efficiency with which she moved through each room like a ghost seeking redemption. The man, a millionaire twice over whose fortune had been built on careful calculations and careful distrust, stood hidden just beyond the hallway arch, his back pressed against the cool wall, eyes narrowed not with anger, but with quiet anticipation that felt like holding his breath before diving into dark water. His fingers drummed silently against his thigh as he waited, each second stretching like an eternity of judgment. This wasn't just about money. It was about everything he had come to believe about human nature, about the inevitable betrayal that seemed to follow him like a shadow wherever wealth and opportunity intersected. And yet, as he watched his housemaid enter the room and pause before the open safe, her silhouette framed in the doorway like a figure in a painting titled Moment of Truth, he never imagined that what would unfold in the next few minutes would utterly unravel him, breaking open a heart he didn't know he still had. Like sunlight piercing through storm clouds, he had wrapped around himself for protection. If you believe in second chances, in the quiet power of kindness that moves through the world unseen, and in the strength of character that can change lives with the simple choice to do what's right when no one's watching, then pause right now. Like this video, subscribe to Kindness Corner, and share this story. Let the world hear that integrity still exists in places where no one's watching, where character is tested not by grand gestures, but by small, private moments that define who we truly are. The housemaid's name was Elena, 32 years old, slender as a reed bent by life's storms but never broken, reserved in the way that deep waters run silent, with deep brown eyes that held the weight of stories she never told, stories of loss and love and the quiet heroism of surviving each day with grace. She had been working in the Harrison estate for just over 7 months, each day a careful dance of duty and dignity, moving through rooms that cost more than most people's entire lives, while carrying herself with a pride that no amount of hardship could diminish. A widow with 2 young daughters, Carmen, 8, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin, and Rosa, 6, who still asked when Daddy was coming home, and a mother battling cancer with the fierce determination of a woman who refused to let her granddaughters face the world without their grandmother's wisdom. Elena was the kind of woman who moved silently through pain, carrying it like an invisible burden that made her shoulders strong and her heart tender. Every morning she arrived before sunrise, when the world was still painted in shades of gray and possibility, tying her dark hair back into a bun that never had a strand out of place, slipping into her simple uniform that she pressed each night with the same care she gave to everything else in her life, and beginning her tasks without complaint or hesitation, each movement a prayer of gratitude for work that kept her family afloat. To most, she was invisible, a shadow behind silver trays and polished marble, a figure who appeared and disappeared like a helpful spirit, noticed only when something was perfectly clean or perfectly arranged. But to William Harrison, the reclusive millionaire who had inherited wealth but never earned peace, who could buy anything except the trust he had lost and the love he had driven away, Elena was a mystery that had begun to haunt him in ways he couldn't understand or explain. William had spent most of his 43 years building and protecting his empire, constructing walls of wealth and suspicion that kept the world at arm's length. People had stolen from him, betrayed him, used him like a resource to be mined until empty. His ex-wife, Margaret, took a fortune in the divorce, her smile as cold as winter morning when she signed the papers that divided not just assets but whatever remained of his ability to trust. Former employees siphoned funds with the creativity of artists and the morals of thieves, turning his generosity into their opportunity. Friends turned opportunists, their laughter hollow when they thought he wasn't listening, their hands always extended for favors that were never returned. And so he built walls, steel ones around his vault and emotional ones around his heart, each betrayal adding another layer of protection that also added another layer of isolation. When Elena arrived 7 months ago, walking through his front door with references that read like a testament to reliability and a bearing that spoke of dignity surviving hardship, there was something different about her that unsettled him in ways he couldn't name. She didn't flatter with the calculated sweetness of those who wanted something. She didn't ask questions about his life, his wealth, his loneliness that echoed through halls too large for one bitter man. She never lingered in rooms longer than she had to, never touched anything beyond what her duties required, never gazed with the covetous hunger he had learned to recognize in everyone else's eyes. And she was, by every record and background check his private investigators had conducted, painfully clean. No debts beyond the medical bills that told the story of her mother's illness, no criminal history, no associations with anyone who might use her as a tool against him. It bothered William the way her honesty felt almost threatening, too pure to trust in a world where everyone had an angle, everyone had a price, everyone eventually revealed themselves to be just another variation of disappointment. Her goodness felt like an accusation against the cynicism he had wrapped around himself like armor. That's when he devised the test, born from sleepless nights and the gnawing need to prove that his worldview wasn't paranoid but realistic, that she would eventually show her true nature when temptation was too great to resist. One Wednesday morning, just before she was scheduled to dust the study where he spent most of his waking hours, staring at documents that represented money but never brought joy, William arranged the safe to be left wide open like a mouth preparing to swallow whatever character remained in the world. He had instructed his security team to disable the hallway cameras temporarily, telling them it was for maintenance while knowing it was for something far more personal and dangerous. No one would know this moment happened except him. He wanted to see what Elena would do when faced with unimaginable temptation, when the solution to every problem she carried lay within arm's reach, when she could change her daughters' lives forever with a single choice that no one would witness. Would she falter like everyone else had? Would she take what she needed and justify it with the story of her circumstances? Or was she truly as unshakable as she appeared, a pillar of integrity in a world built on compromise? Elena entered the room exactly at 8:42 a.m., her movements precise as always, carrying her cleaning supplies with the efficiency of someone who had turned necessity into art. She didn't notice the safe at first, focused as she was on the morning routine that had become her meditation, not until the sunlight streaming through the tall windows hit the steel door and bounced a glare across the polished floor like a beacon demanding attention. She stopped mid-step, her duster frozen in her gloved hand, her entire body going still as if the world had suddenly shifted on its axis. Her eyes went to the safe, then quickly to the hallway, scanning for any sign of movement, any indication that this was normal, that someone would return any moment to close what surely couldn't be intentionally left open. No one. Silence that felt heavy with possibility and danger. Her breath caught in her throat, a sharp intake that spoke of recognition, not just of opportunity, but of the test this represented. And for a long moment, she stood still, staring at the open vault as if unsure whether to believe what she was seeing, as if it might be a mirage born from too many nights of counting coins and coming up short, too many conversations with bill collectors who spoke in deadlines and consequences. William's heart pounded against his ribs like a prisoner demanding freedom. He watched as she approached slowly, hesitantly, each step deliberate and careful, her face a canvas of emotions he couldn't fully read from his hiding place, but could feel in the tension that filled the air between them. This was the moment. This was where she would reveal herself to be just another person willing to compromise their principles when the stakes were high enough. Her fingers hovered just over the stacks of money, close enough that he could see them trembling slightly, close enough that she could have easily palmed several bills without disturbing the careful arrangement. For a heartbeat, William prepared himself for the familiar disappointment, for the confirmation that trust was a luxury he could never afford. But instead, she reached for the cleaning rag tucked into her apron and softly began wiping the safe's edge, careful not to smudge or shift a single bundle inside, treating the vault not as an opportunity but as another surface that deserved her careful attention. She didn't count the money with hungry eyes. She didn't glance around greedily, calculating what she could take without detection. She simply wiped the dust off the steel with the same precision she used on every other surface in the mansion, her movements gentle and respectful, as if the safe were a sleeping child that shouldn't be disturbed. Her concentration was complete, professional, untainted by the fortune that lay just inches from her fingers. And then something unexpected happened, something that would replay in William's mind for years to come, like a song that changes meaning each time you hear it. Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded photo, creased and old, worn soft at the edges from countless moments of desperate hope and quiet love. She glanced at the hallway once more as if needing to be sure she was alone, not for theft, but for privacy, and placed the photo on the shelf next to the cash with the tenderness of someone placing flowers on a grave. It was a picture of two little girls, maybe 7 and 5, grinning with the innocent joy of children who still believed in happy endings, standing in front of a hospital bed where an older woman lay smiling weakly but smiling still, her love for them written in every line of her face, despite the tubes and machines that spoke of battles being fought with quiet courage. The photo spoke of everything Elena was fighting for, everything the money in that safe could secure, her daughter's education, her mother's treatment, a future free from the constant fear of losing what little they had left. Elena whispered something so softly that even the hidden William couldn't hear, but he could see her lips moving in what looked like a prayer, maybe for strength, maybe for forgiveness, maybe for her mother's healing or her daughter's happiness. Then gently, as if the photo were made of butterfly wings, she picked it up again, kissed it with the devotion of someone who carried love like a sacred flame, and placed it back into her pocket where it would remain close to her heart. She closed the safe door with a soft click that sounded like a verdict being rendered, like justice being served in the quietest possible way. William stepped back into the shadows, stunned by what he had witnessed, his chest tight with emotions he thought he had buried beneath years of calculated distance. He wasn't sure what he had expected. A quick hand grabbing what desperation demanded, a stolen bill justified by circumstances, maybe even a moment of hesitation before conscience surrendered to need. But what he saw was reverence for what wasn't hers, pain carried with dignity, and love wrapped in restraint so complete it took his breath away. He had watched her place her deepest motivation next to unimaginable temptation and choose honor over ease, principle over relief. In that moment, she had revealed not weakness, but a strength that shamed every compromise he had ever made, every wall he had ever built, every time he had chosen suspicion over faith. He turned and walked away before she could see the tears forming in his eyes, tears for the goodness he had nearly missed, for the cynicism that had blinded him to the light that had been walking through his halls for 7 months, cleaning not just his home, but somehow, without knowing it, beginning to clean the darkness from his heart. That evening, William couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed that felt too large, too empty, too much like a monument to everything money could buy and nothing it couldn't, staring at the ceiling while his mind replayed the moment like a film he needed to study frame by frame. The photo, the quiet kiss, the safe untouched, despite the desperation it could have ended. The weight of it all settled on his chest, like a truth he hadn't prepared to confront. It was no longer about the test he had designed to confirm his bitter expectations. It was about her, about the kind of character he had spent his life believing didn't exist, about the possibility that his protective cynicism had become a prison that kept out not just betrayal, but also the authentic goodness he had stopped believing in. He realized with the sharp clarity of revelation that he had judged everyone through the lens of his past wounds, using old pain as a filter that colored every new relationship with suspicion, and in doing so, had nearly lost sight of the rare goodness standing quietly under his own roof, asking for nothing, taking nothing, giving everything. The next morning, Elena arrived to find a letter on the kitchen counter addressed to her in William's neat, heavy handwriting that spoke of education and precision and care. Her name was written across the envelope with the same attention to detail she brought to every surface she cleaned, every task she completed. Inside was a simple note that would change everything, words that carried the weight of recognition and redemption. Integrity is priceless, but so is peace. You've given me both. Your daughters and your mother deserve a life without fear. Please accept the enclosed without guilt. It's not a reward. It's a thank you for reminding me that goodness exists and that trust, while dangerous, is the only thing that makes wealth worth having. Attached was a check, blank except for his signature, ready for her to fill in whatever amount would end her worries, whatever sum would let her sleep without calculating bills and counting days until the next crisis. Elena dropped into the nearest chair, her legs suddenly unable to support the shock of unexpected grace, stunned by kindness she had never dared to hope for. Tears streamed silently down her face, each drop carrying years of struggle, months of wondering if she was strong enough to carry everyone she loved through another day of uncertainty. Her hands trembled as she folded the letter to her chest, holding it like a promise that suffering had an end, that goodness was rewarded not always but sometimes, not always immediately but eventually, not always obviously but powerfully. In that moment, she felt the weight she had carried for years lift just slightly, like the first deep breath after holding your breath underwater. Her mother's treatment that had been postponed too many times, her daughter's school fees that kept her awake, calculating and recalculating, the threat of eviction that hung over them like a storm cloud that never quite passed. It could all vanish. And not because she had begged or compromised or stolen, but because she had chosen to do the right thing when no one was looking, when character was tested not by public scrutiny, but by private opportunity. That weekend, William visited her home for the first time, driving through neighborhoods that spoke of struggle and resilience, where flowers grew in window boxes despite everything, where children's laughter rang out from small yards, where love was measured not in square footage, but in attention and presence. He came not as an employer with the authority to judge and direct, but as a friend seeking to understand the life that had shaped the character he had witnessed, the circumstances that he had forged integrity stronger than the steel of his safe. He sat at the small wooden table where her family shared meals and homework and dreams spoken in whispers, played with her daughters who giggled and chattered without knowing they were entertaining a millionaire, seeing only a kind man who listened to their stories about school and friends and the butterfly they had found in the garden. Carmen showed him her drawings of princesses who saved kingdoms, while Rosa demonstrated her ability to count to 100 in both English and Spanish, both girls glowing under the attention of an adult who saw them not as interruptions, but as treasures. William brought with him a folder filled with documents that represented possibility. House listings in safer neighborhoods where children could play outside without fear. School information for districts where dreams were nurtured rather than limited. Medical specialists who could give Elena's mother the care she deserved without the family choosing between treatment and survival. He offered her a new position, head of domestic operations, with full benefits and a salary that reflected not just her duties, but her value, with a flexible schedule that allowed her to care for her family without sacrificing their security for her job. But more than that, more than money or position or opportunity, he offered something rare from a man like him, something precious and fragile and powerful: trust. Trust that she would manage not just his household, but his faith in humanity. Trust that goodness existed and could be relied upon. Trust that he had been wrong about people, about life, about the possibility of connection that didn't end in betrayal. "I tested you," he said quietly as the evening grew soft around them, his voice carrying the weight of confession. "And you tested me right back without knowing it. You showed me what I had forgotten. That there are people in this world who do the right thing not because someone's watching, not because there's a reward, but because it's who they are when everything else is stripped away." Elena nodded, understanding passing between them like a bridge built of mutual recognition. "I saw the safe," she said simply. "I knew it was a test. But I also knew that taking what wasn't mine, no matter how much we needed it, would teach my daughters that desperation justifies dishonesty. I'd rather struggle with my integrity intact than prosper with my character compromised." Sometimes the truest tests aren't passed with applause and celebration, but with quiet, unseen choices that echo through lives like stones thrown into still water, creating ripples that reach shores we'll never see. Sometimes the richest people aren't those with the fullest safes and the biggest houses and the longest investment portfolios, but those who live in truth, even when no one is watching, even when temptation whispers that compromise is reasonable, even when doing right feels like the hardest possible choice. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. We tell true emotional stories that reveal the quiet power of humanity, the strength that lives in ordinary people faced with extraordinary choices, the grace that moves through the world one honest decision at a time. Drop a comment below if you believe that even one act of integrity can change everything. That character revealed in private moments has the power to transform not just individual lives, but the very nature of human connection. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you do if no one was watching? What choice would you make when your integrity was the only witness to your actions? When the only judgment that mattered was the one you would carry in your heart for the rest of your life?